He built his fortune on promises he timed like contracts and one he never filed. On a chilly March morning in Portland, an unsigned letter was worth more than a will. Everyone thought the trust said discretionary for heirs, it also said donor intent first. By summer, an apology cost millions and still couldn't buy back what he'd kept. Stay with me till the very end, because you'll see what clause mattered, who altered a request at 2:41 p.m., and why a public apology in a courthouse lobby became the only currency left. The first time I heard Ethan Calder say the word promise, it sounded like branding. We were in a glass-walled office that smelled faintly of antiseptic and old coffee. My father promised a lot of things, he told me, eyes sliding to the city skyline. He was generous. But he was also practical. On the table sat a leather folder embossed Calder Family Trust. I left my recorder on the table, its light steady. We're just confirming donor intent, I said. Richard Calder, Ethan's father, built condo towers that touched winter clouds and cast long summer shadows. His philanthropy paid for scholarships, dialysis stipends, and a union toolbox fund for apprentices. In the ICU, 2 weeks before he died, he told the nursing supervisor, "No one who worked for me should choose between breathing and paying for it." The nurse charted it as patient prefers charitable continuation. Someone in that office would later wish they'd saved the first version. The trust instrument, dated April 2015, created an irrevocable philanthropic trust alongside a family subtrust. The language read crisp and confident: primary obligation, maintain donors' designated programs through existing partners, discretion for heirs applies only after program funding. The banker's email called it clear as window glass. But when Richard died in late January, Ethan requested temporary suspension for fiscal review. That phrase, temporary suspension, would become the scaffolding for a very different building. I met Lila Calder, Ethan's sister, in a diner that kept the coffee coming and the questions hotter. Dad made him promise at Advent, she said, fingers around a chipped mug. Advent was when the hospital began an experimental home dialysis pilot for employees' families. He said, Lila gets the Kearns bungalow free and clear. And the dialysis stays. She slid a phone across, a voicemail from their father, voice thin but firm, recorded that December. "Hold me to it," he whispered. Hold him. At the Calder Foundation, Nora Delancey, the director, stood beside a corkboard of program photos, people in puffy coats holding letters, kids holding scholarship certificates, a welder's hands blackened by honest soot. "We received a pause notice in February," she said. The letter used words like alignment, consolidation, and pending audit. False comfort dressed as stewardship. "We're told it's a quarter," Nora added. "Dialysis vouchers bounced last week." She pushed her glasses up. "We can't face this forever." Brendan Hale, trust officer, wore a tie the color of a bruise and a smile to match. He walked me through mechanics, a technical hold, a discretionary review, a redistribution event to stabilize market exposure. "Donor intent remains paramount," he said, "but liquidity trumps everything under volatility." He slid a memo across the table, no material deviation. It had 3 signatures, 2 initials. Someone had blacked out a line on page 2. At the time, the missing line looked like a redaction for privacy. It wasn't. Lila's attorney, Ms. Ortiz, kept neat stacks of paper banded like rib cages. "There's a non-merger clause," she said, tapping the trust. "Heirs cannot swallow donor programs." Her eyes flicked to me. "But they can starve them quietly." On the wall hung framed verdicts like family portraits, on her desk, a sticky note, "Keep it boring." "Boring wins," she said. "Boring is credible." I asked for Brendan's internal emails. She was already drafting the subpoena. "People think greed is loud," Nora said as we walked past the dialysis center's waiting room. "Sometimes it's a whisper, a delayed wire, a changed vendor code." On the bulletin board, a printed voucher program flyer had a stamp, suspended, slanted across the bottom. A security guard folded a paper crane from a denial letter and tucked it into his pocket. "You going to tell this story?" he asked. "Only if it's true," I said. He nodded. "Then find the timestamp." The timestamp lived in the bank's audit log, a garden of numbers, where everything looks alive and nothing smells like earth. At 2:41 p.m., February 18, an entry toggled a distribution priority from Program Sustained to Air Transition, effective retroactively to February 1. The user ID belonged to Brendan's assistant, logged in from Brendan's workstation. The memo field, per verbal authorization EC. EC was Ethan Calder. Someone in that office would later wish they'd never used initials. Ethan's version in our second interview sounded like a lawyer's coat, tailored to fit, built to outlast. I asked for a pause to avoid misallocation, he said. Interest rates were volatile. He gestured toward a whiteboard dotted with arrows. We're talking weeks. I played his father's voicemail. Ethan's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping like a trapped moth. He said a lot in those last days. He lifted the leather folder. What matters is what he signed. At St. Benet's ICU, the nurse manager remembered Richard's final week. He was weak, but not confused, she said, tapping a computer screen. The note read, Point requests continuation of Calder's stipends, instructs son Ethan to honor. A second note, added later that day, read, will confirm with trust. Different font, different initials. Why two notes? I asked. The manager frowned. We had a charting update, she said. But I'll check the shadow logs. At the time, no one noticed the blank space in the log. The shadow log showed the original note saved at 9:03 a.m. and a supplement added at 3:55 p.m. by a user who'd never charted for that patient before. The supplement softened everything, patient suggests, family discretion, pending financial review. The nurse manager printed both. We don't love when money speaks clinically, she said. She placed them into a manila envelope as if laying flowers. The timestamp was a detail to everyone else, to her, it was everything. The Kearns bungalow, the one Richard promised Lila, had 3 steps that creaked like polite warnings. Lila's key no longer fits. They changed the locks, she said. On the window, a notice, pending sale, consolidation of family assets. A realtor's sign leaned against the hedges, waiting for a good day. Inside, someone had boxed the family albums. On the kitchen counter sat a folded piece of paper, keep proceedings amicable. Inheritance as public relations. We sat on the front stoop and counted how many neighbors waved. 5 waved, 1 looked away, 2 pretended not to see. We were never the same kind of wealthy, Lila said. He got the boardrooms, I got Sundays. A cat the color of rain padded across the yard and paused, assessing us. People say it's just money, she went on. But it's also respect. She thumbed the voicemail again, jaw set. He said free and clear. Ms. Ortiz filed an emergency motion to preserve assets and enjoin the sale, citing the voicemail, the trust clause, and the ICU notes. Judge Reeves, in a tie with tiny anchors, granted a temporary restraining order. No transfers pending investigation, he said. Brendan, summoned to explain, brought a binder and that bruise-colored tie. Everything is compliant, he offered. The judge lifted the binder, felt its weight, and set it down. Compliance and truth aren't synonyms, he said. Back at the foundation, Nora opened a drawer and took out a cardboard box. Inside were printed emails from Richard in 2017 and 2021, each ending with the line, dialysis stipends continue absent catastrophic insolvency? The 2021 email added, board may not reallocate without matching third-party pledge. She smiled without joy. He built an emergency brake. Brendan's memo described the pause as routine. His routine met Richard's brake like ice meets salted steps, someone was going to slide. The Apprentices Union Hall held its monthly meeting under buzzing fluorescence and a banner that read, We Lift Together. An older man named Middleby told me the Toolbox Fund bought his daughter time when her car died the week before exams. I heard the money's under review, he said, forming quotations in the air. I don't review my rent. He shrugged. Promise is a bill you pay without a reminder. Someone in that office would later wish they'd saved the first version. That week, someone leaked a screenshot of an internal Slack thread between Brendan and a policy consultant hired by Ethan. We need to avoid donor intent because optics, the consultant wrote. Use program audit language. People like audits. Brendan replied, "Dialysis is politically sympathetic, recommend quiet hold." The timestamp, 8:12 a.m., the Monday after the memorial. Shifting truth wears clean shoes and leaves muddy prints. The words felt like strategy. They were also instructed. I printed the Slack thread and placed it at the bottom of my notebook, facing outward. When I met Ethan for our third interview, he noticed it like a mirror no one asked to look in. "You're making this adversarial," he said, a touch of hurt. "I'm making it accurate," I replied. He leaned back. "My father would have told me to stabilize first." He closed his eyes for a second too long. He would have told me to be practical. Practical was how Brendan described moving $3.2 million from Program Sustain to a short-term instrument under the heirs subtrust. He called it parking. Ms. Ortiz called it conversion. Judge Reeves called it a problem and ordered a forensic accountant. "You can't park money in a no-parking zone just because your hazard lights are on," he said dryly. Ethan's face flushed, Brendan's tie darkened under the lights. The court date for a preliminary hearing was set. The forensic report read like a weather map, arrows, flows, systems colliding. On page 7, a line, retroactive toggling altered obligations contrary to clause 3A. On page 9, heirs subtrust received benefit via overnight sweeps. On page 13, vendor code masking obscured pauses. The conclusion, material deviation from donor intent. Brendan fidgeted, then blamed the market. Ethan blamed confusing documents. The judge blamed neither, he asked questions and waited. Someone in that office would later wish they'd printed fewer memos. We found the donor letter in a box labeled holiday cards, as if hiding light among lights. Richard's typed note, never mailed, addressed to my board and to my son. It read, "Intent is not a suggestion. Keep dialysis stipends. Lila gets Kearns. If memory fails, this is your memory." He jotted a pen line under the word intent. The photo tucked in the envelope showed him with a nurse, both laughing at something just off camera. The hospital's legal team produced a notarized addendum drafted the week before Richard passed but left unsigned due to patient fatigue. Its language tracked the typed letter, protect stipends, convey Kearns to Lila, cap personal distributions until program reserves replenished. Unsatisfied formalities do not erase intent, Ms. Ortiz whispered, eyes bright. The opposing counsel asked to exclude it. Judge Reeves admitted it as a statement of intent. The courtroom air shifted like a weather front. Brendan's assistant, the one who toggled the priority, took the stand. He looked like a man who had carried someone else's bag for so long he forgot where he was going. Per verbal authorization, he repeated. Mr. Calder said pause. Ms. Ortiz asked, what did the policy say? He swallowed. Donor intent first. She nodded. So why the retroactive date? His eyes flicked to Ethan. To align the accounting. The judge's pen stopped moving. At the time, align the accounting sounded harmless. It wasn't. Outside court, Nora spoke to me without moving her lips, the skill of someone who holds secrets until they can be told safely. There's a vendor with a new code, she said. Calder Solutions LLC. A shell formed like an unkind idea. We used to pay the dialysis center directly, she added. Now it's routed through them. In the directory, Calder Solutions shared an address with the trust office. The tie between stewardship and extraction had never been so literal. I asked Ethan about Calder Solutions. He said it was a pipeline to streamline payments, just-in-time philanthropic logistics. We were going to consolidate, he said. I told him he had already done so, at the expense side. He looked hurt again, then angry, then nothing. My father made me the heir because I can handle hard things, he said quietly. No one taught me how to handle grief. For a moment, the room went honest. Judge Reeves called an evidentiary hearing on donor intent versus discretion. He read the donor's typed letter aloud, his voice even, the words heavy. Intent is not a suggestion, he said, pausing. This court gives those 5 words the weight the donor meant. He ordered the immediate reinstatement of dialysis stipends and a forensic path for Lila's house. Brendan adjusted his tie so tightly the bruise darkened. Ethan stared at the table and did not speak. The next morning, the dialysis center's waiting room buzzed with relief. Vouchers printed clean. A grandmother with a braided bun hugged Nora. "You fought for us," she said. Nora shook her head. "He fought for you," she said, tapping Richard's letter. "We just read what he wrote." The security guard unfolded his paper crane, now creased and soft, and smoothed it on the counter like a flag. Someone in that office would later wish they'd never said quiet hold. Lila returned to the Kearns bungalow with a locksmith who hummed church songs under his breath. He handed her a new key. "You want me to oil that third hinge?" he asked. "Always sounds like it's carrying old arguments." Inside, light fell across the kitchen table, dust floating like an occasion. Lila set the voicemail on speaker and let her father's thin voice fill the rooms. "Hold him to it," he said. She exhaled and nodded as if to someone present. Brendan resigned to pursue opportunities, which translated to before he was asked to leave. The foundation board replaced him with a steward who wore a tie the color of clear sky. Ethan, however, did not step down. "I will make this right," he told the press. We paused to be prudent. The reporter asked, "Prudent for whom?" His answer stumbled. The court set a hearing for restitution and a review for punitive measures. Prudence, it turned out, had a ledger. The restitution plan required a replenishment of all diverted funds plus interest to the programs and penalties to the foundation. It also required the conveyance of the Kearns bungalow to Lila free and clear, language the order borrowed from Richard's voicemail. Ethan's counsel objected to the phrasing. Judge Reeves smiled. "Sometimes clarity is borrowed," he said. "Sometimes it's owed." The audience murmured like a soft storm. In the lobby afterward, Ethan stood alone beside a frond that had wilted at the tips, as if exhausted by court. "Do you think I meant harm?" he asked me. I answered like a mirror. "Harm doesn't require intent." He nodded as if hearing a diagnosis for the first time. He said, "Hold me to it," Ethan murmured. I thought he meant the buildings. I waited, he swallowed. He meant himself. Irrefutable proof arrived in a trifecta: the typed letter, the ICU original notes, the forensic flow map showing toggles and sweeps. Add to that the Slack thread, the vendor shell, and the board emails about donor breaks. Ms. Ortiz stacked them like a staircase and invited the court to climb. At the landing waited Richard's voice, thin but unmistakable, "Hold him." The judge entered findings of fact. The central conflicts, donor intent, the house, and the stipends, were no longer questions. Ethan's public apology took place at noon in the courthouse lobby, microphones like flowers, cameras blinking. "I failed the donor intent," he said. "I failed my father. And I failed my sister." He read from paper, hands steady. "I thought stewardship was a strategy. I confused management with care." The foundation staff stood behind Nora, their faces a mix of relief and watchfulness. In the back, the security guard from the clinic watched on his phone and nodded slowly. After the apology, Ethan asked Lila to meet in a side room with walls the color of sand. He offered the deed and a binder of photographs from the bungalow, taken before the boxes. He did not cry, he didn't need to. "Dad said the house would smell like cinnamon on rainy days," Lila said, flipping to a picture of the kitchen window. "It still does." She took the deed, then placed the photo back carefully, like a fragile truth. Judge Reeves issued the final order: restitution paid, programs replenished, fees assessed to the heir subtrust, not the foundation. He required governance reforms, 2 community seats on the board, public quarterly reports, and a donor intent certification with each major shift. "Fine print is not a hiding place," he wrote. "It's where we say what we mean." The courtroom exhaled. What seemed like paper had become a promise again. Reforms began as checklists and became habits. The foundation published a plain-language donor intent page. Nora recorded a video explaining the dialysis stipends in the simplest terms: who gets help, how, and why. "If we ever pause," she said, "you'll know before the pause, and you'll know why." The video collected comments filled with names and gratitude, each a tiny ledger entry paid forward. Someone in that office would later print those comments and tape them beside the donor break clause. Ethan sold a condo he'd planned to keep and funded a scholarship in his father's name for union apprentices' families dealing with chronic illness. He walked into the union hall with no cameras and a folded check. "Repairs aren't applause," he told Middleby, who squinted at him and then nodded. "They're just repairs." The banner above them, "We Live Together," did not change. What changed was how he read it. At the hospital, the nurse manager hosted a staff training on integrity and charting where money meets medicine. She used Richard's case in an anonymous form. "Don't let wealth edit care," she said. She held up the shadow log printouts. "We are the record keepers of real lives." A new policy required a second verification before any financial notation could be added to a chart. If someone tried to soften a promise, the system would ask twice. Brendan, recently jobless, sent me a long email in which he threaded self-justification with Rue. "I thought my job was to keep the money safe," he wrote. "I did not ask for whom." He attached a photo of his tie unwound on a table. "I never liked that color." I didn't reply. "Not yet." Some letters need to sit and cool before they can be read without smudging. In the bungalow, Lila painted the kitchen and chose a color named Prairie Fog, which looked like a memory at noon. She framed the typed letter, not the original, but a copy, and hung it near the back door. Under it she stuck a sticky note that read, "Keep it boring." When the rain came, the house did smell like cinnamon, she smiled, a private ceremony. On the counter, a key lay beside a sprig of rosemary. My last interview with Ethan was in the Foundation's conference room, now with a whiteboard titled Donor Intent, not Optics, not Alignment, Donor Intent. He sat with no folder, no tie, just a legal pad. "I keep hearing his voice," he said. "Hold me to it." He looked at me. I thought he meant ambition. He shrugged, almost amused at himself. He meant decency. He paused. "I can pay back the money. I can't pay back time." Time became the most expensive currency in the room. We filmed Nora reading the donor break clause to a group of first-year staff. She asked them to underline the line that would be their compass. "Intent is not a suggestion," they read aloud. She smiled. "That's your sentence." They wrote it on index cards and taped them to their monitors. "This isn't about worshipping donors," she added. "It's about respecting words that outlive us." The security guard's paper crane sat on her shelf, open now, a small monument. When the quarterly report went live, the comments section filled with stories: a woman who could work night shifts because her mother's dialysis ride was covered, a son who called his father less scared because the stipend came before the bill. Lila posted a photo of the bungalow's third creaky step with a caption, "Donor Intent at Work." Ethan liked it from his personal account, no fanfare. Someone in that office would later read those comments when budgets got tight. I returned to the courthouse lobby at noon on a different day, when nothing special was scheduled. The space hummed with the business of disagreements becoming sentences. The apology had been a spectacle, the repair was paperwork. In a glass case, a poster now displayed the Foundation's new transparency policy: "If it affects you, you'll see it." A clerk told me Judge Reeves had a rule of thumb: words you can explain in an elevator. He liked small wisdoms. Brendan did not get his old job back. He did accept a role at a smaller nonprofit far from the city, where the biggest scandals were missing bake sale recipes. He sent a second email: "We read your piece about donor intent for training. Thank you." He attached a photo of a bulletin board with the sentence underlined. He had pinned his bruise-colored tie to it like a retired number. I replied this time, "Keep asking for whom." Ethan visited the dialysis center quietly and sat in the waiting room as vouchers were called. A man with a baseball cap thanked the staff for keeping the light on. Ethan watched, hands folded, chin lowered. "You can stay," the receptionist told him. "It's public space." He nodded. He did not say who he was. He did not leave, either. On the wall, a framed print read, "Promises or bills." He looked at it for a long time. And then a new form appeared. He didn't need to be recognized to learn. Lila hosted a small dinner in the bungalow for the people who had stood with her, Ms. Ortiz, Nora, the nurse manager. They ate stew at the table where the light fell like conversation. Someone bought cinnamon rolls, and the smell did what memories do, it turned strangers into witnesses. They toasted with iced tea because someone had an early shift. To boring victories, Ms. Ortiz said, grinning. They last the longest. The cat, the color of rain, watched from the doorway, invited without asking. The lesson did not arrive in triumph, it arrived like a line in a policy, firm, unglamorous, waiting to be read. Ethan learned that wealth can move quickly, but repair cannot be expedited. Lila learned that a promise does not enforce itself, people do. Nora learned that transparency is not a stunt but a habit. The nurse manager learned that a chart note can hold the weight of a vow. The foundation learned to ask the only question that matters, for whom? In the archive room of the foundation, a plain folder sits in a drawer labeled Calder, Intent. Inside, a copy of the typed letter, the donor break clause, the court order, and a printed photo of the poster in the courthouse lobby. The light is off, the room is quiet. The folder does not know it saved anyone. It only holds paper. But sometimes paper holds us. This story is inspired by true events. Names and details have been changed to protect privacy. If you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, subscribe to this channel and never miss the next case where truth prevails.